there's an issue between mixing the fact that there may well be living letters, living light beings that are part of creating everything and form the fabric of everything, and Hebrew culture. Therefore, it's not about learning Hebrew. It just happens that these living letters seem to be part of an alphabet, but in reality, it's nothing to do with Hebrew culture, or you have to be a Hebrew or understand the letters. Because when you speak with the voice of God creatively, that light responds to your voice in the same way, whether you understand Hindu language or any other language. It's not the language which is important, it's the intention that you speak and the authority you speak with. So I don't speak Hebrew, and when I speak creatively to call something into being, I don't think of living letters of Hebrew letters and have to turn it into Hebrew letters for light to respond to me, to form reality around me. So understanding that there may well be a way that how God spoke things into being and what was God's voice, and it was the light that responded to his voice produced something. Jesus is the word that was with God in the beginning. Now, Jesus is, well, and people get really hung up on all this. Well, J didn't exist in the language before, the 15th century or whatever. Therefore, it's Yeshua. You don't say the word Yeshua and whatever. It's like, why? Why get caught up in all that nonsense? It's nothing to do with the reality that Jesus was God's intention in a living way that produced creation. It doesn't really matter whether there were living letters that sort of responded to it or not, to be honest. Because if you try and think, oh, I've got to speak and a living letter is going to respond, you just put another layer of complexity into what is quite simple. I call things that be not as if they are, and light responds to the authority when I speak God's word, when I speak his intention in his heart, and reality forms. If I've got to say, well, which Hebrew letter, I'm going to have to learn Hebrew to be able to create anything. Where this is just the fact that God's words are living. They are alive, and the living light, which is the fabric of everything that is formed in a creational way, responds to God's intentions as words. But God could speak words in English or Japanese or Chinese or any other language. It doesn't really matter what the words are. It's the intention that formed those words. So when I brood with God and I resonate with his heart and I become a frequency that can speak his intention, then light responds to my voice like it responds to his voice. But I'm not speaking Hebrew, and I'm not even thinking about living letters in the slightest. And I think it adds another layer to people and actually stops people acting very simply in terms of creatively when they think they've got to understand what the Hebrew letters are in words to be able to form those ideas into a reality. And I think it's mixed up with Hebrew roots and Hebrew culture and a whole mess of stuff, which confuses the issue. God is not Hebrew. So God's ideas and words existed before anything else. Now, it might be, but the Hebrew language was communicated to them because God chose them to be able to communicate to the world as the light of the world, which they failed to do. And now we are operating in that role as sons of God. And therefore we can communicate as light to the world and be a lamp and a light to help people find their way to God. But I don't think you have to think about it in any terms of a culture of the Old Testament or the culture of the Hebrew people. It's just that is how God chose to give them a language, and it might have reflected those living letters, but you don't need to understand the living letters to be creative, because light responds to me speaking in English, because my English is just my thoughts, you know, that helps me understand what I'm communicating and my desire out of God's desire. If you enjoy these videos, would you please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe? It really does help. Thank you very much.